Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Authors and Arcs, Part 2. I am Ronny Khuri, Associate Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist, and my pronouns are he and him. Before we begin, I would like to go over some technical details. So, links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. So to download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you are in the audience, you are in listen-only mode, but we do welcome any questions that you might have. So on the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. So if you have a question, if you need technical assistance, all you have to do is click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. On our end, we will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions. And we are obviously going to have some Q&A portions here. We might not have time to get to audience questions, but if we do not, we will pass those questions along to the authors after the webinar, and they'll be able to follow up with you directly. Last but not least, Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar that I mentioned before. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. All right, so today, we will have the pleasure of hearing from Gillian McDunn, author of Honestly Elliot from Bloomsbury Publishing. Ellen Hagan, author of Don't Call Me a Hurricane, also from Bloomsbury. Jas Hammonds, author of We Deserve Monuments from Roaring Brook Press, an imprint of Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Julie Dow, author of Team Chew and the Battle of Blackwood Arena from Farrar, Straus and Giroux, which is an imprint of Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. We will also hear from Leonarda Carranza, author of Abuelita and Me from Annick Press. Casey Oster is illustrator of Rabbit Chase from Annick Press. Monique Polak, author of For the Record from Owlkids. Jennifer Ziegler, author of Worser from Margaret Ferguson Books, which is an imprint of Holiday House. And finally, Crystal Maldonado, author of No Filter and Other Lies, also from Holiday House. So the way this will work is we will hear a brief presentation from each author. And after each presentation, if we have time, I will throw out a couple of questions about the book. So first up, we are going to hear from Gillian McDunn. Gillian is the author of These Unlucky Stars, The Queen Bee and Me, and Caterpillar Summer, which received 2-star reviews and was selected for the Texas Bluebonnet Award Master List, and Kirkus Reviews and Parents Magazine Best Books of the Year lists. When she isn't reading or writing, she is probably cooking, traveling, or spending time with her family. She lives near Raleigh, North Carolina, with her husband and children and a very silly dog named Friday. Thank you so much for being here today, Gillian.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm Gillian McDunn, she, hers, and I'm so excited to tell you about my new book coming in March from Bloomsbury called Honestly Elliot. So next slide, please. Okay, so first I want you to meet Elliot. So first you need to know that he is a 6th grade boy and the year has not been an easy one. His best friend moved away. His grades were kind of terrible when he was adjusting to middle school. In fact, he almost failed. And also, when his dad and stepmom shared the news that they were expecting a new baby, something happened that Elliot refers to as the incident. He does not like to talk about it, but he feels really bad about it. The place where Elliot shines is the kitchen. That is his main thing he has going for him. He loves to cook. There's a celebrity chef that he follows who is the kind of chef who yells at contestants and has a lot of strong opinions and throws muffins at people if they're doing things that he thinks aren't right. And one of his big things is that he's against baking. He just thinks cooking is like a real serious endeavor and that baking is not serious. And then also Elliot has ADHD. And so he's at a point where he is kind of struggling. I think this happens a lot with kids, that maybe some of the strategies that were learned in elementary school just need a little fine tuning and retooling once middle school comes along and there's more responsibility on them. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is what is happening. There's a business project by the school, and Elliot ends up being paired with Maribel, who is the smartest and most popular girl in the entire grade. So they need to work and come up with a business plan that will actually, be selling things, and they can keep money that they make. And it's all supposed to be in partnership with local businesses or local resources in their community. So Elliot thinks this is great because he thinks that if he can make the money to deal with what happened with the incident, his dad will let him go to culinary camp. So together they do some research and dig into some community cookbooks and find a recipe for pie that is kind of about making the most of what you have. So this is a real thing. In the Depression, there were these things called desperation pies, and they have the kinds of ingredients you would just have in your pantry or that would be pretty low cost. They don't rely on things like fresh fruit, which might have been harder to come by. So the pie that they end up making is just like eggs, buttermilk, and sugar and flour. I mean, it's your most basic and straightforward of pies. But they get kind of into that concept and this idea of making the most of what they have and showing people who they really are. So next slide, please. Okay, so the ingredients, the big things about this book to know, it's a story about real kids and real problems. In my books, I really try to write the kinds of kids that you might know, in your neighborhood, in your classroom, very much just contemporary, realistic fiction. Elliot has this very candid and honest voice. He was a really fun character to write, and he just likes to tell it like it is. He's very frank about ADHD. He's frank about his feelings. Sometimes he's the kind of kid who gets really overwhelmed and emotional and can tear up. But I think that just lets him really be this kind of character that people can connect to because he's willing to put his heart out there. There is a realistic depiction of ADHD for Elliot and then celiac disease for his friend Maribel. Both of those depictions are coming from my personal experience. So I tried to represent those just as accurately as I can. It's funny and emotional at the same time, so hopefully will be something that might pull at your heart and also have you laughing a little bit. The themes are just friendship and family, making the most of what you have. And then the book, you can see this cool artwork that was made. So at the beginning of each part, there's one of Elliot's kind of creative and slightly outrageous pies, kind of in the style of the Great British Baking Show and how they make these really pretty pictures, but then Elliot's are silly. So he calls this school project pie. He's not a fan of like group projects and just the idea that you never know what you're going to get, but it's for a grade. So have fun. One other fun thing in the book is that there are footnotes. He's often just sort of commenting on what's going on. So there'll just be like a little footnote, and at the bottom of the page, it'll either be like a funny joke or an observation or just another angle. And I feel like that kind of contributes to that, the feeling that sometimes people with ADHD, or just if you're feeling kind of scattered, that kind of looking around and getting all the information from different sources. So next, please. Okay, and this is just, I guess, to sum up, Bloomsbury made this really lovely little graphic that's kind of if you know kids who might like these stories, you could kind of consider this a bit of a mix of some of the elements from these books that will hopefully resonate with readers. And I guess, remember, the tagline is, sometimes finding yourself can be a little messy, which is kind of a fit for Elliot. So that is all for slides.
Thank you so much. We have a little over a minute left, so let me just throw one question at you. You mentioned that the ADHD element came from personal experience.
Yeah.
I guess I want to ask, why did you choose, or maybe why at this point did you choose to make that a part of this book, and kind of how Did it affect your approach to the character?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we're all kind of in the world embracing this idea that neurodiversity is a thing. And I was really excited to represent an ADHD character who was not just about like silly antics and has struggles, but also has a lot of strengths. So you get to see him in the kitchen where he is completely in his element. And he says it's actually an advantage to have a brain that'll go 6 directions at once because there's so much going on in a kitchen. So having that paired with the celiac disease and kind of the idea that we all have things that we're working on was really important for me to get across too. So
beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wish we had more time because I could ask 100 questions, but that's how we're doing it today. Thank you, Gillian. All right. Next up, we are going to hear from Ellen Hagan. Ellen is a writer, performer, and educator. She is the author of Reckless, Glorious Girl, and the co-author with Renee Watson of Watch Us Rise. Her poetry collections include Blooming Fiascos, Hemisphere, and Crowned. Her work can be found in ESPN Magazine, She Walks in Beauty, and Southern Sin. Ellen is the director of the poetry and theater departments at the Dream Yard Project and directs their international poetry exchange program with Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. She co-leads the Alice Hoffman Young Writers Retreat at Adelphi University. Raised in Kentucky, she now lives in New York City with her family. Take it away, Ellen.
My father used to call me a hurricane. Wild and unruly, rowdy and messy, fast and reckless, unmoving and impulsive, headstrong and willful, unexpected and quick, electric and fleeting, floating and flying, scrappy and breakneck. All the time moving and flowing and hurried and flashing and free, free, free. Now, we are careful not to compare anything to a hurricane, because we know how dangerous and destructive it can be. We know its toll.
Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to be here with you all this afternoon. My name is Ellen Hagan, she, her pronouns. And the video you just saw was shot on location in Long Beach Island, New Jersey, which is where the book is set. And Don't Call Me a Hurricane is a novel in verse. It's about a group of young environmental activists who've lived through a hurricane on their small island home. It's the summer before senior year, and their biggest action is protecting Clam Cove Reserve. It's an area of marshlands that's in danger of being destroyed. Eliza Marino is our main character, and she finds herself falling in love with a tourist who is holding a devastating secret that could change the shape of everything they're fighting for. So the story explores family, community, the changing ocean tides. It's rooted in climate justice, and this is a love story for the people and places we come from, and a journey to preserve what we love most about home. I always think about what affects me deeply and what I'm trying to bring back into the story. Barrier Islands are a high-risk environment. I grew up spending my summers on the Jersey Shore in Long Beach Island. So they face rising sea levels, storm surges, disappearing dunes, and our human impact on the coastal ecosystems and communities is dire. So it's our job to continue to learn how to navigate our relationship to a changing planet. I wrote this story to honor and celebrate the ocean and the people who call it home. I find myself home when I'm near the ocean. And I also wrote it as a way to address my own anxiety and fear about climate change. I needed to hold both parts of the story. So the more I read about and studied the effects of global warming, the more I unearthed young people fighting back and creating real and sustained change in the world. So I wanted to show these young people who have such a deep beautiful friendship and how they are rising up together. That's how Hurricane arrived. So I'm going to just share two other poems from the novel in verse. And these two poems are speaking to each other a bit. Been thinking of home. Can't stop my mind from running, then sinking, then drowning. It's always the same. Float, then flail, sink, then disappear. My dreams drenched. Home is an island and then becomes a raft, and then it's just me descending. Because that's the way the ocean moves. It has not one care about bodies or objects, no concern for homes or shops, only washing everything away. And let me be clear, I love it with all of me. Love its salt and wave, love its murky and dangerous, love its sand and tide, love its seashell and plankton, love the way it holds me, floats me, washes me. But this anger is something new, unexpected. All I see is everything disappearing right in front of me. A flood of loss, all of me plunging below. How is it possible to love something so much, but still be terrified of it? Hold it close, but worry it could sink you. Want to live beside it, but scared it could end you. These questions stay lodged inside me, carry them with me all along the way. My therapist is always asking me to analyze my relationship to water, to the ocean. Always asking how it shapes me, changes me, pushes me, pulls me, brings me back to myself. And every time I think about my people, my family and friends, and how all of us are linked to water, to swimming, to treading, to hoping, to breathing, to staying alive, to surviving. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. So we have a couple minutes here. I want to ask about Eliza and Milo. Could you kind of talk about how you used their relationship to explore Eliza's views?
Yes, I loved that question. I feel like I had to, first of all, I love a love story. I feel like anytime I can get a love story on the page, I love the first love moment. And Eliza is local to the community. So she grew up on the island year round, and she understands that unique infrastructure of a barrier island. So she's also grown accustomed to tourists who show up only in the summertime and have a very different relationship to her home. So Milo's family represents new money, development. They are thinking about changing the landscape. So their love story allowed me to talk about class, climate justice, preserving what you love about home, and also staying open to how that could change. You know, I love the conversations they have around protecting the marshlands and the real work they have to do to figure out what their relationship is to each other and how it's changing, how the climate is changing, and how their love or their desire to know more about each other is changing alongside of that. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. And I think we can fit in one more. I guess, I mean, clearly you're a poet. Why? But you've also written prose. So why did this need to be a novel in verse?
Yeah, I think the story of Hurricane arrived in poems. So it started with words that held onto the feeling of everything being washed away. So hanging on to those words. Your community destroyed, and I kept coming back to the words on the cover, after the storm, what is left behind. And poems are taut, you know, there's a tension there and a thread that's pulled tight. So each line creates tension on the page. Climate change is so devastating, and the main character is dealing with this severe anxiety while also navigating new love and, you know, love for her community. So this is a character dealing with those extreme emotions and powerful language. So I felt like it was the best way. Poems hold all that emotion in such a brilliant way. So it felt like it held the story. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ellen. That is our time. Everyone, Don't Call Me a Hurricane comes out in July. And I think I forgot to say earlier that Honestly, Elliot is coming in March. Next up, we will talk to Jas Hammonds. Jas was raised in many cities and in between the pages of many books. They have received support for their writing from Lambda Literary. Alexa, stop. Alexa. Excuse me. They have received support for their writing from Lambda Literary, Sundress Academy of the Arts, and the Highlights Foundation. They're also a grateful recipient of a McDowell James Baldwin Fellowship. We Deserve Monuments is their debut novel. Thank you so much for joining us, Jas.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Like Ronnie said, my name is Jas Hammonds. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. My debut novel, We Deserve Monuments, is coming out with Roaring Brook Press. It is a YA contemporary coming-of-age novel about a queer girl named Avery who is uprooted the beginning of her senior year, and she moves down to a small little town in Georgia, into the hostile home of her terminally ill grandmother, Mama Letty. Throughout this process, she uncovers family secrets. She falls in love and makes new friends. It's a really great book if you are a fan of queer Black love, family secrets, small town drama, late nights by the river, and a lot of bittersweet feels. So I've also been so fortunate to get some early buzz and blurbs from some of my favorite authors, including Brandy Colbert, who called it an exquisite story about the value of family and the danger of long-held secrets and the beauty of first love. Also, Maika and Maritza Moulit called it a beautifully poignant novel. Next. I was joking with my partner that my book could kind of be like could kind of be compared to Gilmore Girls if Gilmore Girls was blacker and gayer. And if anybody else is a fan of Gilmore Girls, you know that Emily Gilmore would probably rather be caught dead rather than wearing those any of those pins. Next. But perhaps some better comps would be novels like The Black Kid by Christina Hammond Reed, that explores how racial tension can ripple down through families and generations. Also has some elements of White Smoke, Me, Moth, and Sadie, that something about, like those, like a slow burn mystery that kind of just seeps in and like that uncomfortable feeling. But you also have You Should See Me in a Crown vibes in this as well, with like that queer, swoony, that rush of first love. And finally, Darius the Great is Not Okay, which explores queer love at the crossroads of family, culture, and identity. A mentor of mine once said that in your first book, you like try to shove it all in, like everything that you care about and everything that you love. And I definitely did that with We Deserve Monuments. So there's a lot going on, a lot of love, and it's hopefully something for everybody. Next. And a little bit about me. I grew up as a military kid, and so I've always been curious about the concept of home. Like I know a lot of other military kids, if you grew up like constantly going from place to place, and now as an adult, I'm a flight attendant. So I've always been really curious about like what makes a place home, and deeper than that, like what makes people a family. This book started about 6 years ago when I was fresh off the heels of college graduation. I had just moved across the country, and I started being really curious about my own family. I used to be like super jealous of people who could say like, oh, I have a hometown, or we had big family reunions, and I never ever had that. So a lot of that curiosity bloomed in me in my early 20s, especially because a lot of family members, particularly on my mom's side, they died before I got the chance to meet them. So as you can see, some of these photos here, they show my grandfather, my great-grandfather, grandmother. Throughout this process, I also got closer to my mom. She's like my best friend down there. We went on a road trip, and it just has been like a really beautiful experience. I think my mom is here actually, so hi, Mom. But yeah, I just started asking these questions about like, how can we honor family members we never get to meet? And in particularly for Black people, like so much family history can, like on the hunt for that, can end in dead ends, like, due to, racism and the history of that. Like you like a lot of it hasn't been recorded. So I got kind of curious, and it just, one thing led to another, and then this book was born. So next. Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you, Booklist, and all of the librarians and educators here today. I know that this world is in, you know, a lot right now. So the fact that we can just sit and geek out about some books for a bit has been such a great experience. So thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. We have a little under 2 minutes left. I guess I have to ask about your readership and what you're hoping for. So, I mean, a lot of teens today are kind of grappling with our country's history and racial violence and that sort of thing. So, if you like, what is it that you're kind of really hoping to communicate to those readers, I guess?
Yeah, so a lot of the focus of We Deserve Monuments is, yes, it focuses on generational trauma and how like the violence of that can, you know, still affect us to this day, but it's also about generational love and community and how important that is for any movement work, is the power of community and friendship and love, and like nothing can really be accomplished without those things. So I think throughout Avery's journey, the fact that she, you know, makes allies, and it's not an easy journey, it's a lot of up and downs. Just knowing young readers, you are making a difference, and the relationships that you're creating are incredibly important.
That's a great answer. I'll squeeze one more in to bring it back to Gilmore Girls. Small towns.
Yes.
What inspired the setting, and I don't know, how did you use it for the drama in your story?
I love a small town. Okay, like I love the almost, you know, suffocating quality of like that comes with everybody knows everybody's business, and it just makes characters like ripe for drama. And so the setting, I always in everything that I write, I love focusing on places that feel like super urgent and, you know, slow and intimate at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jas. We Deserve Monuments will be out in July. And next up, we will hear from Julie C. Dow. Julie is the author of several acclaimed novels for teens and children, including Forest of a Thousand Lanterns and Broken Wish, published by Disney Books. A proud Vietnamese American who was born in upstate New York, she now lives in New England. You can visit her at juliedow.com or on Twitter at Jules_writes. Take it away, Julie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Julie C. Dow, and I am so excited to talk to you about my middle grade debut, Team Chew and the Battle of Blackwood Arena, which comes out from FSG on July 26th. Next. I actually began my publishing career in young adult fiction. My debut, Forest of a Thousand Lanterns, came out back in 2017. And since then, I have been so fortunate to go on to publish 3 additional books with Penguin Random House and with Disney Hyperion. And I am now so honored and so thrilled to be publishing my middle grade works thanks to FSG and Macmillan Children's. Next. A little bit of history on me. I have been a reader and a writer for as long as I can remember, and that is in large part because of all the amazing school librarians who encouraged me. They saw something in this shy, lonely, introverted kid and made me feel that reading and writing could really lead somewhere for me. Next. The first book I ever wrote was when I was 9 years old and in the 4th grade. It was called The Hidden Kingdom, and it was about me and my 2 best friends finding a portal to a magical world through my living room TV. The book was a smashing success. It got starred reviews from my mom and from Mrs. Richardson, my favorite English teacher. But something about this book really lit a fire in me. It started this lifelong passion with the written word, and it is absolutely the beginning of why I am here with you today, talking about a book that I'm going to publish. Next. part of why I love middle grade so much and have wanted to write it for so long is because of the relationship that I have with my two younger brothers. I'm the oldest of three, I'm the big sister, and yet you can see from these photos over the course of 2+ decades, they got taller, bigger, and stronger than me. So rude. But I'm constantly inspired by how much we love each other and how much we fight with each other and compete with each other, even though we are now all in our 30s or almost about to be in our 30s. And what I went through with these two, I have brought into Team Chew. It's inspired a lot of my middle grade book. Next. Team Chew and the Battle of Blackwood Arena is about two siblings named Clip and Sadie Chew. Clip is the big brother. He's arrogant, popular, athletic. He's going to be the captain of the soccer team. His little sister Sadie is going into the 6th grade. She's quieter, nerdier, total bookworm. These kids are as different as night and day, but what they have in common is the desire to one-up each other. One summer, the Blackwood Gaming Arena comes to town, bringing with it mini golf, skee ball, an arcade, and this really intense version of laser tag. The Chews decide to take their friends into the arena and duke it out once and for all. The version of laser tag that they play involves them wearing these virtual reality headsets that transport them to these different epic battleground simulations, including a haunted castle, a space station, a mad scientist lab. So while they're playing regular laser tag, they're also fulfilling other objectives and going on side quests in the game. However, as they start to play, the game starts to become a little too real. They discover that there's something weird going on here. There seems to be a sinister presence inside the game that's trying to lure them into the simulation and trap them. And the only way that they can avoid this threat is if they learn to work together as siblings rather than against each other. Now, if you know anything about me and any of the books I've written, you'll know that they all have fairy tale roots, and Team Chew is no exception. Team Chew is based on Hansel and Gretel, which is a fairy tale about a brother and sister getting lured through the woods by a witch. Well, Team Chew is about a brother and sister getting lured into a game of laser tag. Team Chew also features an incredibly diverse and dynamic group of friends. I'm having such a blast writing these kids. I'm working on book 2 right now, and the shenanigans that they get involved in are just ridiculous and so funny. And one of the things I've always loved about middle grade fiction is how beautifully it juxtaposes humor and heart. These books are allowed to be funny, but they also often have this powerful emotional core that tugs at the reader. And that's what I really strive to do with Team Chew. I'm also proud that Clip and Sadie represent my heritage. These are Vietnamese American kids, but they're also just allowed to be kids. They're just allowed to be going on adventures and having fun and not struggling with their identity, although you do see glimpses of their culture, their food, and their language. And lastly, because my family is so important to me, I made sure to have the Chew's parents and grandparents all involved and very together as a dynamic and cohesive family unit. Next. So all of these things that I love, all of these things that are important to me, I have combined in Team Chew and the Battle of Blackwood Arena. I am so immensely proud of this book and so grateful to FSG, who will be releasing this book on July 26th. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. So we have a couple minutes. What inspired you to, laser tag is such a thing, and I didn't even remember it until I saw this book. I was like, of course, like that was such a part of my childhood. So what inspired you to bring that into the story and kind of create Blackwood Arena?
Yeah, great question. I grew up in the 90s. And laser tag was a big thing then. And I was so surprised to hear some of my friends who have younger children say that laser tag is still a lot of fun today. And so it's carried out through all these decades. And I wanted to bring that in because I've always wanted to write a middle grade that felt like Stranger Things, the show, with a little bit of a retro edge. And I think that bringing laser tag in and having this inspiration of the Nickelodeon shows I used to watch, like Legends of the Hidden Temple, where it's action adventure, fast paced. That stuff really informed Team Chew. So it's everything I wanted to read as a kid.
Excellent. You're speaking my language. Last question then. You mentioned the multi-generational aspect. So why was it important for you to include that?
Yeah, my grandparents were always very important to me in my childhood. They were always present. And I think it's so interesting how kids' relationships with their grandparents can be almost completely different than their relationship with their parents. Like grandparents tend to spoil them a lot more. They're a lot more lax on rules. But then sometimes when you have the cultural element, the grandparents can be just as strict, especially for Vietnamese kids. And so I wanted to play with that and just have the family be very present and be a very big part of the Chu's lives.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you
That is our time. Team Chu and the Battle of Blackwood Arena out in July. And next up, we will hear from Leonarda Carranza. Leonarda was raised in Tekaronto and born in Cuscatlan, El Salvador, to a mixed-race family of Afro-Indigenous ancestry. She holds a PhD in social justice education from the University of Toronto. She is the winner of Briar Patch Magazine's Writing in the Margins contest and Room's 2018 Short Forms contest. Leonarda lives in Brampton, Ontario, part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Welcome, Leonarda.
Thank you for having me. So yes, my name's Leonarda and my pronouns are she, her. I'm having some tech issues, so I might turn off my video in the middle of this, but hopefully you'll be able to hear me. So yeah, this is my debut picture book. It's Abuelita and me, and essentially this is the story of these two characters, the narrator and her abuelita, and it really centers around the relationship that they have with each other and the relationship that they have with the outside world or their neighborhood, the people in their community. And often people are not very nice to abuelita, and they experience different types of microaggressions. And the young narrator, she doesn't really have the words for or the language for understanding what's happening, but she knows that something is off and she's trying to figure it out. The book comes out April 12 this year, and it's from Annick Press. Next slide. Yeah, so this, a little bit about me. This is my abuelita, and next slide. And this is my family. This is when we were in El Salvador. So that's my dad and my older siblings and my younger brother. And in the other slide, it's my mom and my abuelita. And so we came to Canada when I was 7, and some of those early experiences that we had navigating a new country and learning a new language, they really shaped the experiences that I was having really shaped me, and they really became a part of you know, the types of things that I wanted to do and think about. So I didn't take a traditional road to writing. I did, as in my bio says, I did a PhD in social justice education, and it was only until I started stumbling or I couldn't finish my dissertation that I started to write about some of my early experiences, writing essays about it and having them published. And then I ended up writing this children's book. And one of the central things that happen in this book is that the abuelita and the main character get yelled at by a bus driver who accuses them of trying to get on the bus without paying. And this is actually an experience that happened to my grandmother. And I don't remember how old I was when she told me about the experience, but I just remember it really staying with me. The fact that there was this bus driver and he was yelling at her and she was all on her own, and no one stood up for her. So it made it, that experience made it into this picture book. Next slide. And so one of the things that was really important for me was that I wanted the heart of the story to be this relationship between the narrator and her grandmother. Abuelita is this really fun person that, you know, she's not afraid of being silly or going outside and getting dirty and jumping in puddles. She's really excited about the types of things that they can do together. And for the narrator, this makes it a joy to be with her grandmother. And it's so much of a contrast for her when they're outside in the world and she's seeing the way that her grandmother's being sometimes ignored, sometimes mistreated by other people. But for me, I think it was really important that this book didn't have a fairy tale ending. So after the bus driver yells at them, the narrator starts to fear going outside, and she thinks that it's better just to stay inside where it's safe and where she feels happy and where she's treated really well. And her abuelita is really gentle with her and allows her to feel, just process all the feelings that she's going through, the grief, the sadness, the anger, and then come to this place where, both of them feel that they're ready and that they can face the bus driver again. And then next slide. And so they're able to do it, and they do it together. And I think, what's important is that despite what's happening, the two of them, the love that they have for each other, the gentle ways that they're able to be with each other, and care for each other and hold space for each other becomes the way that they're able to face this situation. And they're happy that, yes, they were able to fix the situation, but also that it's kind of like the love that they have for each other goes into the outside world as well. And next slide. Yeah, so the book is illustrated by Rafael Mayani, and again, it comes out April 12th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let me ask, so there's so much joy and beauty in this book, but of course there's also the element of racism. And so when you're bringing that to such a young audience, and these are true common experiences, obviously, but how do you determine how far you take it on the page for an audience like that?
Yeah, like I wanted to make sure that I was, authentic with the experience. Like I was saying, it's really, I think I found it really hard to write about racism because it was really hard to find a resolution. Like how can they respond to it in a way that's authentic when they don't have the capacity to solve it? And I also was really aware, not to bring in certain elements that would make the book feel hopeless and, make a young reader feel like, there's no way out of this. So I wanted to present really authentic experiences, and also the kind of like the everydayness of racism, and that kind of the way that it sticks with you or affects the way that you see yourself, and kind of like highlight those little moments and how they start to affect the narrator. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very glad that you brought this to the picture book world, because even though it's a difficult subject, I think it's important. And that's all the time we have, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, Abuelita and Me, out in April. Let's see here. Our next presenter will be Casey Oster. Casey is an Ojibwe Anishinaabe comic artist and illustrator. They live in the Rainy River district of Northwestern Ontario. Take it away, Casey.
Hi. Okay, so bonjour, everybody. Casey Oster, Indigenous Cause, Manitoba, Dagong, Donji, Makwan, Dotam. My name is Casey Oster. I am obviously from the Rainy River district, from a reserve called Rainy River First Nations. And my clan is the Bear. So I am an illustrator. I do comics and just like general illustrations. Most of my work kind of focuses on characters who are Indigenous and kind of exploring sort of daily life experiences based on my experiences and experiences from like my cousins and friends who are also Indigenous. So I was really excited when I got contacted to help bring Rabbit Chase to life. I was contacted through like Instagram and I was a little surprised but excited, and they you know, kind of helped me walk me through the process, because this is actually my very first like big official project like this. So it was very exciting, very fun, new experience for me. And this was just a super big like step for my art career, I guess. Next. So Rabbit Chase is a book. It's a graphic novel, sorry. And it was written by Beth Lapensy, and she's amazing. She's the one who put together the story and the characters. So these are all her creations. I just kind of gave them a look and sort of gave them action and, you know, a way for us to see the story progress. So this story is about Amy, a young two-spirit Indigenous Anishinaabe child, and they are kind of struggling with kind of standing up for their identity against, you know, people in their real life, other students who don't really understand, teachers who don't really understand, and they're just feeling a little lost and kind of don't really know what to do. And then they go on a field trip for a ceremony with their Anishinaabe classmates. Next. And so here, obviously they're at the ceremony. This is kind of the very starting point of where things start to change. Amy doesn't really see that yet, but this is kind of the starting point. Next. So as I said, written by Elizabeth and illustrated by me. It's very Alice in Wonderland. That's kind of the kind of feel that we're going with. I actually have a copy right here. And it's so fun. I had so much fun illustrating all the scenes. Probably my absolute favorite scene was actually the tea party scene. And there's a lot of color and a lot of characters and a lot of humor, fun, and it explores Amy's identity with their gender identity and expression and their cultural connections, and meeting different characters that kind of help them along that process. So yeah, I also, if everything is good to go, I can also show an illustration that I've been working on. Just a little doodle, really, but this is Amy, and there it is. So this is Amy, and in their arms is another character from the graphic novel, Jabai Boos. So these two are probably a couple of my absolute favorite characters in the whole story. They're kind of like the main characters as well. And they're a lot of fun, and I hope everybody loves them just as much as me. And I think that's it, unless there's another slide. I'm not too sure.
Hello, I'm going to hop in. We have a little bit of time for questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no
thank
problem.
you, thank you so much for that. That was great. You mentioned Alice, and clearly this is a fresh take. And you mentioned that you collaborated with Beth LaPensie. So when it came to for those who haven't seen it, a lot of the elements of
I'm so sorry. I have somebody's at the door. I'm sorry.
Okay. You have to step away?
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and move on to the next in line, and then at the very end, I will get this question to Casey.
Hi.
All right. You're okay. So Casey, we're going to come back to you if that's all right. Okay, doke. Let me regroup here momentarily. Next up, we have Monique Polak. Monique is the award-winning author of over 25 books for kids and young adults, including the middle grade novel For the Record, which publishes in March. She teaches English literature, creative writing, and humanities at Marianopolis College in Montreal, Quebec. Take it away, Monique.
Hi, everybody. I have to say, I'm having a blast. I'm taking so many notes. I'm going to have a lot to think about and write about afterwards myself. So I have a little bit longer than the other people. That's just how it turned out. So not that I want to lose time. I want to use my time well, but I want to tell you how cold it is in Montreal. It's minus 14 degrees Celsius. And I checked for you because I've forgotten how to do Fahrenheit, 6.8 Fahrenheit for you guys in the States. I've really enjoyed all the stuff. Casey, I have to tell you, because you don't know me, but from till today, I'm nuts for Alice in Wonderland. And you guys can see a little bit of my office. There's a bit of, I don't know if you can see the Alice pictures there. My office here in Montreal is a shrine to Alice in Wonderland. It's what I did my graduate work on. Anyway, I can't talk about it now, but I'd love to. And my whole office is filled with other stuff, all related to Alice. And oh, my daughter is named Allie. So anyway, she's the best part of my collection. Okay, so I'm here today to talk about my new middle grade book, which is called For the Record. It has quite a story. And in fact, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told anybody else. Well, just my friends about this story. And I was even thinking, should I or should I not tell them? But I've decided to tell you, but not right away because I want to work up to excitement. Okay, so For the Record is a story about a girl named Justine and her little sister, whose name is B. Their parents are divorced and their mom wants full custody of the girls. And Justine loves both of her parents, but she finds herself getting drawn into the mess. We used the word, we heard the mess word. I think that was from the very first presentation, right? So that was great. So here's another story where there's a mess. And she ends up taking her mom's side. And Justine loves to write. And very early on, really from the very first chapter, we see that she's keeping a record, right? Which is why the book is called For the Record, which happens to be a legal term also. But she's keeping a record of everything that her dad does wrong. And this ranges from letting the girls eat white bread to swearing when he's caught in traffic. I do that too, I must admit. But his daughter, Justine, is writing all of this down. So though Justine doesn't know it, she's a victim of something called parental alienation. This term, I'm going to tell you how I came to it. Well, I'll tell you first how I came to it. My sister is what's called a family law lawyer here in Montreal. I'm the only one in a family who's not in the legal world, legal business. Anyways, so family law lawyer is really a nice way of saying divorce lawyer. And she had been telling me for a long time how horrible the problem of parental alienation is, how widespread it is, and that I need to do a book about it. So in 2016, the term parental alienation was actually listed in the DSM-5, and that's, I have it written down so I don't get this wrong, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, where they say induced parental alienation is a specific form of psychological abuse. And sometimes, to make it even more complex, the parent isn't even aware they're doing it. They don't even mean to be, evil's too strong a word, but it can become evil. So that makes it even more twisted, and from a writer's point of view, more interesting for me to work with. Okay, now here comes the part that I wasn't sure I was going to announce to the world, because you're kind of my world today. So I myself have, like I tell my students, I've had a lot of husbands, but I just tell them more than one and less than 8. But I'll tell you the truth, I've had 2. But this story didn't come from that. It came from my experience of online dating. Okay, so I have a very nice boyfriend, and I found him after 49 dates, because you see, I'm a very hard worker, both as a writer and as a woman who is dating. So I heard this story from one of the guys I went out with. So I don't even remember the guy's name, but when you go on all these dates, I don't know how many of you in the audience have had the same experience. It's basically like you hear all their, the bad stuff that happened in their previous relationships. And the guy was a nice enough guy. Like I said, I don't remember his name, but I do know that I came home. It was late because we had gone for a hamburger and a drink, and I wrote everything down that he told me about a very complex case of parental alienation in which he found that his daughter was keeping a notebook. And to his credit, he never confronted the daughter about the notebook. He just knew that she kept it. And I use that in my story too. Okay, so now you know the truth about where this story came from. And so the other thing I want to say is that I'm a college teacher here in Montreal. I have been for a long time. It's my last year, 35 years of teaching. I think I'm going to retire, although I'm hooked on the kids because that's where I get a lot of my ideas from. Anyway, I've also seen from my own students how difficult a complicated divorce can be for kids. And I often, if I do hear about it, I'm not a therapist, but I will say, like, concentrate on your school, concentrate on your writing, right? Hold on to what you can hold on to. And this is exactly what my narrator, Justine, what she fails to do, right? Because she gets so caught up in the mess that's going on. So now I'll talk about the book specifically, and I had the thing on to time myself, but I think I have to go faster. Okay, so I need to hear a voice. That's how I start. So the parental alienation thing, my sister had drawn my attention to it. I had that date. I'm like, whoa, this is it. I got to write. By the way, if you hang around with writers, you have to be very careful what you tell them, because things get used one way or another in our stories. So I started to hear the voice of Justine. And Justine, I gave her the name Justine because I wanted to explore justice. She's a serious kid, and she's very responsible, and she's a little bit tough. And that was a bit of a problem in the rewrites, because I have to admit, people didn't like Justine that much. And the horrible admission is that Justine's based a lot on me. Okay, for the record, the notebook, I told you how that came. I had a lot of fun with all the characters. And the thing for me is, like, for all of us, the characters start to become real. Like, I know Justine, right? Not just because there's a little bit of me, or more than a little of me in Justine. Her dad came to me very easily. He's like much lighter. So is her little sister, B. I love B. And B blurts stuff out, and she adds some, I think, much needed comic relief to the story, because it's a tough read, right? And then there's the cat, the guy that I had the date with, whose name I've forgotten. He had a one-eyed cat. Well, if you think I was so inventive for the one-eyed cat, now you know where he came from. I was going to say just briefly, because I think I'd like to leave some time for questions. And I believe there's a question about Alice in Wonderland, because I saw they sort of sent us possible questions. So I'd like you to ask me that question, Ronnie. Okay, so my process is I do a lot of research. Like, again, I start with something big, right? Like, this big thing is parental alienation. I'm going to read as much as I can about it, but I am very eager to write. So I start writing, and then I research as I go along. And there was a lot of rewriting in this book. And I think if there's, aspiring writers out there, it's all about the rewriting. I mean, I love the first draft, but the rewriting is when it starts to get better and you go deeper into it. And I had to do a lot of work to soften Justine, and especially to soften the mom. And it was my sister who said to me, no, but those mothers, or the fathers in the case of parental alienation, they are monstrous. But that didn't work. She was too monstrous for my book. So I had to soften her, and that was very interesting. I have 2 more things I want to tell you. One is that Justine ends up, I don't want to give too much away, she ends up inventing a story, and she starts to think it's true. And it's what she's doing is wrong, and she's going to get, eventually she's going to get angry, and that anger will mobilize her. But that impulse to invent stories, I think that's, for me, that's what I do, and that's what I can't seem to stop doing. And the last thing I was going to tell you, it's also deeply personal, but this one I had planned to tell you, is that it was only when I was rereading this book that I realized, you know what? I had an experience of this when I was a kid too, because my parents had a rocky period in their marriage. I'm old, I'm 62, so I can talk about my parents' marriage. But anyway, and they broke up for a while, and my mom tried to really implicate us. And I remember how bad I felt, not right away, because first I was mobilized like a little soldier to help my mom. And then I got good and angry. And it's so interesting to me that I only figured that out. I didn't write the book thinking of that, but it must have been there all along. Okay, Ronny, did I leave you time to ask me any questions?
You did, and I loved everything you said. Thank you so much. You've also opened my eyes to some things. I'm gonna have to call my parents after this. So 9-year-old Ronny wants to know, you talked about your inspiration for this, but what are you hoping the readers receive from it on the other end?
Well, Tim Wynne Jones, if you guys know him in the States too, but he's like our Canadian children's writer. I once heard him say that kids' books for, he was talking about YA, but I think it's for middle grade too, hanging on, just hang on, hang on, don't give up. And also, like the thing I tell my students, like, you can't solve your parents' problems. Step out of that mess. And it's so natural, especially, and look, Ronny, I can see, because I know my young people, he's nodding, like I saw you in my office as a student, it's like, yeah, so many of us, it's like we're caring, compassionate people. So you want to help, but it's not kids' place to fix adults' problems. And sometimes they need to get other help, because who's going to help them? And at the end of my book, I'm very happy. There's a list of resources. I can't remember if it was my idea, the publishers, I think the publisher, but it was a good idea. So, to find a reliable adult, someone that you can talk to, right? Very important. And books.
Absolutely, books. All right, shall we talk about Alice while we have a minute left?
I think I don't have time, but yes.
I'll take a minute. So
okay, yes.
my frame of it was what makes Alice relevant always? Why is it still here?
That's a great question. I was thinking, what in the world does Alice have to do with this book? But Alice has to do with every book, because I could show you, I'm looking at the poster of Alice talking to the Rackham illustration of Alice talking to the caterpillar. Who in the world are you? Because there's so many things in Alice. I teach a whole course on it, but it's identity, who we are. And that's always the question, whether you're going to be 62 or whether you're like Justine 13, it's who we are. And that's a journey. That was Alice's journey, right? And it's complex and the best question in the world and the toughest question.
Thank you so much. And that definitely applies to Casey's book as well. That's going to be our time. I am going to have to move on. Thank you, Monique. Let me see here. Next up, we have Jennifer Ziegler. Jennifer is an author of books for young adults and middle graders, including How Not to Be Popular, Revenge of the Flower Girls, and Revenge of the Teacher's Pets. She is on the faculty of Vermont College of Fine Arts MFA program on writing for children and young adults. Like Werser, excuse me, she is a lover of words, wordplay, puzzles, libraries, and bookstores. Unlike Werser, she was never sent to the principal's office. Is that true? Jennifer lives in Austin, Texas with her husband, author Chris Barton, and you can visit her at jenniferziegler.com. Thank you for being here, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you so much. I am just thrilled to be here. This is so much fun. It's geeking out over books is my favorite thing to do besides actually reading and writing books. So yes, my name is Jennifer Ziegler. My name is she. My pronouns are she, her. And I have to start out by saying that there's some construction going on just outside my window. So if you hear banging or whirring or a faint version of Van Halen's Panama, it's not a tech problem on your end. It's just where I am right now. But I'm here to talk about Worser, which is my novel coming out March 15th, The Ides of March, with Margaret Ferguson at Holiday House. And so the reason this book came about is because, as Ronny alluded to, I am a huge word nerd. I'm assuming that everyone here is a word person, so hopefully you can relate to what I'm saying. All novels, of course, contain words, but this one is also a love letter to words and to the people who adore them. I am a former classroom ELA teacher, and I currently teach, as Ronny said, at an MFA program on writing for children and young adults. As both an educator and a writer, I understand the instinct to treat words with reverence. We know that words have power and that you have to be careful with that power. And it's good that we know that. But I think we should remember that words can also be playthings. Having fun with words is a huge reason why I became a writer. That, and I was lucky enough to have very encouraging teachers and librarians. I was that kid who loved Mad Libs, anagrams, jumble, crossword puzzles, Scrabble. I'm still a word nerd. And yes, I'm completely addicted to Wordle. I'm so glad there's just one puzzle a day or I would get nothing done. But I guess my point is, if we treat words with too much veneration, it can sometimes stymie us. We can be too scared to try to express ourselves. This is true of writers, and I think that this is particularly true of young people. So playing with words helped me get comfortable with words. And these days, you writers know what I mean. When writing feels like a slog, I do a word game or 2 or 16 to rediscover that joy. And it also helps me stretch my brain and see new connections. After all, if we want to create, we have to learn how to think creatively. And I think it helps with that. Anyway, it's this particular part of me, this love of words, that I seeded the character Worser with. As I was getting to know him early on, I realized we shared this passion. The book began through him. It was his voice that first came to me. And I realized that he was a bit of a know-it-all. He used big words and was very exacting with his speech. It was this realization that I hooked into, and it helped me understand him. At that point with characters, it's sort of a matter of widening the lens. Who is this person? Where are they? What are they grappling with? And I came to understand that he was the child of 2 college English professors, that his father died when Worser was very young, that he was misunderstood and bullied by kids his age. And so for many years, it had been just him, his mom, and their shared love of words. And I came to realize that his mom had recently suffered a debilitating stroke, which basically made her lose her words. So Worser, at the start of the book, is feeling very lost and alone. And it's funny. At least I hope that people will find the humor in it. I hope that readers laugh and also connect to the character and some of the themes of the book. I hope also that they see the fun in words. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Booklist, and thank you everyone for being here and geeking out with us.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We have a little over 2 minutes left. So you've written a few books. Can you talk about why this was? I'm just curious with kind of prolific authors, like how do they decide on an idea or go with one thing? So why now? Why this book?
I really love this question because I do think I could only have written this book at this point in my life. It's probably true of all of our books, because after all, self is story and story is self. And I feel like writers are always writing toward a truth, something they're trying to understand about themselves, about life in general. What's ironic for me is that I usually don't understand these truths until I'm deep into the novel, sometimes after it's been published. I think this book bubbled up out of me because I was feeling at the mercy of time. You know, I was pondering and asking questions about change, change that brings growth and change that brings grief. When we think about grief, the word, the concept, we tend to think about ultimate loss, the loss of a loved one, but change also brings grief. Some are obvious, like the end of a relationship, loss of a job, but some are less obvious, like my children. I am so proud of who they are and the adults that they are becoming, but with that also comes the realization that I will never hold those babies again. You know, I will never see those chubby-cheeked toddlers, those excessive chatty second graders, and I miss the people they were, even as I'm really proud of who they are. And this book, I think, was me grappling with that melancholy. And I know that children feel this too. I remember very strongly growing up those moments of, oh, I'm too old to play this now, or suddenly you realize you're not interested in doing the things you used to love to do. So I think that's where it came from.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm so sorry that we're out of time, and we're running a little behind overall, so I'm going to have to move things along. But thank you again, Jennifer. Worser comes out in March. And our final author, thank you so much for being patient, is Crystal Maldonado. Crystal is a young adult author with a lot of feelings. Her debut novel, Fat Chance Charlie Vega, is a New England Book Award winner, a Cosmopolitan Best New Book, and a Pop Sugar Best New YA novel. Her next novel, No Filter and Other Lies, explores teenage life in the social media age and the lies we tell ourselves and others. By day, Crystal works in higher ed marketing, and by night is a writer who loves Beyonce, shopping, spending too much time on her phone, and being extra. Her work has also been published in Latina, BuzzFeed, and the Hartford Courant. She lives in Western Massachusetts with her husband, daughter, and dog, and you can find her everywhere at Crystal Wrote or crystalwrote.com. Take it away, Crystal.
Hi, friends. So Ronny said all that you really need to know about me. So honestly, I feel like we're done here. I'm just kidding, obviously. So my pronouns are she, her, and I am the author of Fat Chance Charlie Vega and No Filter and Other Lies, which you can kind of see in my backdrop. And I'm super excited to be here today and to tell you a little bit about me and my newest book, No Filter and Other Lies. Next, please. So here are some important things to know about me. I'm a Gemini with a lot of feelings, as I said in my bio, and I put all of those big feelings into my books. So I write these stories about fat Latina girls kind of as they figure themselves out and they kind of grapple with what they want to be and they learn to love themselves in a society that often tells them they are not worth loving. So as an eager young reader, I spent so much time in libraries and in bookstores and at school, just like reading. And as much as I loved these books and they felt like home, I rarely ever saw characters that looked like me, and especially not as that main character. And if I was like relating to a character, they were often just like the sidekick, or they weren't written in a very sympathetic or nuanced way. And so it became my goal to kind of fix that in whatever way I could. So that's what I've tried to do through both of my books, Fat Chance Charlie Vega and No Filter and Other Lies. So No Filter and Other Lies tells this story of a 17-year-old girl named Kat Sanchez. She is a fat Puerto Rican photographer, and she is on the cusp of just discovering who she is and figuring out kind of where she belongs in a time when she feels like she belongs nowhere. So there, after a series of missteps and lies that she tells and rejections, after a really, really bad night, Kat, who is absolutely obsessed with Instagram, decides that she's tired of being herself. She steals a friend's pictures and she creates a whole new identity where she gets to live that life that she so desperately desires. Obviously, that goes very poorly for her, especially when it causes her to keep up these lies, and she starts to develop some surprising romantic feelings for a follower. So like Kat, I discovered a lot about myself online as I sought out communities where I found others like myself. And my personal social media journey started out when I was just in elementary school back in the day of America Online. So that is why I'm sharing my early AOL screen name with you all today. It was Mel B. Geary for my love of the Spice Girls. And I just feel like you know everything you need to know after finding out that's what my screen name was. Next, please. So here are a few things that you can kind of expect through No Filter and Other Lies. So we've got our fat brown main character whose story is actually not about her fatness or about her brownness. And I think it's important to kind of balance that in stories. So as much as I want stories that are all about being Latina and all about being fat, I also just sometimes want to write great stories that just happens to be their identity. And so in this one, we really follow Kat as she explores her queer identity and really starts to deal with some of the dysfunction within her family. So there is a very sweet sapphic romance that you get to see play out, and we'll totally ignore the fact that it involves catfishing, like details. There's a lot of lying in this book. There's a non-traditional family structure, including some really wholesome grandparents and friends that become like family. There's a lot of love for photography. And if you love dogs, you're in luck because there are so many dogs in this book. So I like to think there's a little bit of something for everybody. And at its core, I really think that No Filter and Other Lies is this story about how we sometimes buckle under the pressures of society and the pressures that we put on ourselves. And we watch Kat as she kind of learns from her mistakes and learns to love herself and find the beauty in the life that she actually has. Next, please. So I just feel like I threw so much information at you. I had 2 coffees today, so I really apologize if I'm talking really fast. But this is my sweet little story, and it's my goal to just continue to tell really important storylines and create these characters that feel like home and feel like representation to the people who need it most. And I think in doing that and in being authentic, that any reader who picks this up, whether they share the identities with my main characters or not, will hopefully find a piece of themselves within it. And if they can find ways to root for these girls that I've created, then I hope that they can also find ways to root for themselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ronnie.
So we do have a couple minutes. We're running a little over time overall, but I'm going to keep it going because that's what we're doing.
Because you're the boss.
Because I'm the boss. I'm almost afraid. I'm afraid to ask, maybe, or maybe I'm excited to ask. It's somewhat of a basic question, but what inspired Kat's story? I wonder if there's any like a story behind the story.
Are you accusing me of catfishing
No.
in front of everybody? Oh my God, no. So I was very much inspired by really my love of social media, and I really wanted to make a messy fat brown character. So like with Charlie, I felt like I really related to what Jas was saying about how your first book, you want to just throw everything in there that you care about, and you want to like make this perfect character just in case that's your only shot. And so then with this book, I really wanted to make somebody who was maybe imperfect and had these flaws, but hopefully readers could still relate. And I also wanted to talk about how complicated I think it is to exist as a young person on social media now. I grew up in a time when you could actually turn the internet off and like walk away from your computer and like put up your little away message and have your Avril Lavigne lyrics, and you cannot do that anymore. So I wanted to explore that a little bit too, and hopefully have teens feel less alone in that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to end it there, unfortunately. And I want to ask if Casey is still here, if they could jump back on so I could get that question out so that Rabbit Chase has its chance to shine.
Yeah, sure. I'm here.
Hello. All right, let me go back to my question. So I was talking about Alice and the collaboration between you and Beth, and I guess I'm wondering kind of one of you or both of you were sort of inserting the Anishinaabe figures and elements into the typical Alice structure.
Yes.
So I'm curious kind of creatively, like where those ideas came from and how that collaboration worked.
Well, obviously Beth came up with like the story and the characters and everything, and she was the one who kind of made that connection, and kind of like when she was presenting the idea and everything to me, she told me right away, she was like, this is basically just Alice in Wonderland, and which obviously excited me. Wonderland is one of my absolute favorite stories, so that also was part of what got me so excited about it. But the it was really interesting because there are characters in it, you know, from Alice in Wonderland who are they're characters that are very similar to characters in traditional stories. They're characters who are people that we interact with every single day. Auntie, who is like the Mad Hatter, she's so much like a young auntie that people, like a lot of Anishinaabe kids have. She's a lot like some of my cousins. She's a lot like me. So I really liked bringing these characters to life and kind of seeing them jump to life and be people that we could relate to and see like in our everyday lives. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's the only one I can give you, but I'm glad we got back to it. And everyone, Rabbit Chase is out in April. Make sure you check it out. And that is a wrap on our presentations and our questions. So I'm going to close things out. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Patron-friendly, librarian-approved, and free with a Booklist subscription. Booklist Reader, Booklist's new digital-only magazine highlighting diverse readers' advisory recommendations for all ages, has arrived. To see and share the latest issue, visit booklistonline.com/reader-issues. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to all of our authors and to our sponsors, Bloomsbury Publishers, Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, Annick Press, Holiday House, and Owlkids. This concludes today's webinar.